All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Power Up Real Estate Show. I'm Mike Fritz. I'm your host. We try to come to you every single week with either cutting edge content of what's going on in the industry, whether it be interest rates rising, inflation, or what's going on with the SEC and how we're raising capital, or a new style of real estate investing and how to get into deals quickly with either low cash, no cash, or even other people's cash. And so I'm so pumped to be here with a good friend of mine, Scott Carson, today, and to talk about a piece of investing that is not as understood as people would like to think. And so Scott comes very, very, very knowledgeable from the note investing space. So if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you smash that like button. This will get the video out to more people so we can continue to spread financial help to people and get them understanding how this whole real estate game works. So Scott, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, glad to be here, Fritzy. It's a beautiful day in the real estate neighborhood for most people, I could say.
Oh, man. And Scott's hailing from Austin, so it's pretty tough to not love Austin, Texas.
It's crazy. It's literally snowing right behind me right now. No, my green screen's acting all funky here. But yeah, no, crazy world in Austin, Texas these days. So
yeah, Austin is absolutely amazing. I've got a lot of friends in Austin, and we love my wife and I love Austin. And so if you have never been there, you need to get to Austin, Texas. It's blowing up in the real estate space. But one of the things we love to talk about here is to bring you just some different ideas of investing. So Scott, first, I want you in your story, I want you to tell them a little bit about how you got into note investing. That very few people wake up in the morning and say, I want to be a note guru and note investor. And so how in the world did you become that guy? And then what is it? And walk us through it, my friend.
So I interesting story. I like many people, many investors out there. I started off watching those fictional TV shows, HGTV, Flip This House, got out of college. We bought our first house when I was married. And then our realtor's like, hey, it's a great time to buy. You've got great credit scores. You could be a real estate investor and pick up a couple properties. I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in a small town in South Texas called Ingleside. It's by Corpus Christi. And my dad owned the local hardware store. And so I grew up fixing everything. I was almost kind of like the real good Tim the Toolman Taylor. You know what I mean? There's not anything I haven't done on a house. So it's like, yeah, sure, let's do that. If we get an opportunity to do it without having to bring a lot of money to the table, let's do it. Let's be investors. We like these shows. I'm sure I can do everything they do on those TV shows easy enough. So sure, why not? So bought a couple investment properties, was making good money, and then suddenly, boom, we got kicked in the teeth because this is back in 2001, 2002. Well, I got laid off from my six-figure job out of college as a financial advisor. And then my two tenants, my renters, got laid off from their job at the computer company that rhymes with hell, known as Dell. You know what I mean? So I make the joke that I was a deadbeat borrower trying to make 6 mortgage payments, 3 first, 3 seconds on a private school teacher salary. Lucky for me, we got rid of the 2 investment properties, kept our primary residence, did a loan modification, and then just kind of for about a year or two there, I was just licking my wounds, just trying to figure out what the heck I wanted to do. And got into banking, worked for Bank One and then JP Morgan Chase, and was doing that. And a buddy of mine that I worked with previously was starting a mortgage company with a couple individual investors that were traveling the country, teaching investing on the Ron LeGrand circuit back in the day.
Oh, man. Going way back.
Way back. Well, Ron's still around. He's just
old. Ron, he is. He's still, and he's not only is he still around, his content's still great.
Still very valuable. Exactly. So
yeah,
I knew that's what I wanted to do. So, okay, I like what these guys are teaching. They were doing fix and flips, but teaching creative financing. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So July 4th, 2004, I was basically on a plane out to LAX doing mortgages for investors. And we did really, really well from 2004 to 2008. And along that 4-year period, it was like an apprenticeship in creative financing and learning how to invest in real estate the right way, not the HGTV way. You know what I mean?
Boy, that's a big jump for a lot of people too, because a lot of people watch Windy City Flippers or HGTV and they're like, oh, that's what it's like. And it's just such a misnomer.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but during that 4-year while we were doing mortgages originating for investors, I also learned the paper business, the side of creating notes, which most people think that's what note investing is, owner financing. But I really liked the side of it where it was basically not just flipping paper, but finding a non-performing debt. Now, if you think about back in that time, 2007, 2008, we started to see a bit of recession. And my mentors at the time were like, listen, this is going to be a once in a generation thing. Think about what happened during the savings and loan crisis, the RTC days, where we had all this debt, all these banks failed, and people were able to purchase and control millions of dollars of real estate for just a fraction of value. And so I did a lot of research on that, and I was like, yeah, this is right. So in 2008, I sold my half of the mortgage company for $1 to my buddy, and I stopped originating loans. But then I started picking up the phone and dialing for dollars and calling banks and institutions, mortgage companies, say, hey, what bad loans do you have in your books? What loans do you have where people aren't paying their mortgage? And I was just literally making 50 to 100 phone calls a day, 3 to 4 days a week, and started getting in these lists of non-performing notes. And that's what I want to clarify a little bit. Most people, like you said, when they think of note investing, they think of, I'm going to owner finance my house and have to carry paper for a period of time, right? That's just a small facet of the note world. What I do, and I've been doing for the last, since 2008, is that we actually buy that debt, buy the mortgage, first liens usually only, on residential commercial property at big discounts. We buy the debt from a bank where the borrower hasn't paid in 6 months to 6 years in some cases, and they sell that debt to us at a fraction of what is owed, because they would rather get the cash in now and go out and leverage that and rinse and repeat that. And then we make our money and profit by buying that debt. And it's kind of like, I won't say it's a do-over, but we can will often offer the borrowers or the property owners a second chance. Hey, get out of jail card. What's going on? What kind of country western song have you been through in the last couple of years? COVID, death, loved one, laid off, financial hiccups, markets dropping, whatever. Let's get you back on track. If you want to stay, great. But if pay, stay. So let's try to work out some sort of modification, reinstatement, forbearance agreement with you to make it a win-win. Because most of the time, I'll give you a bit of example. We're buying that debt at a huge discount. And I kind of compare myself, if you guys are we have any fans of like Christian Bale or Steve Carell or Brad Pitt, a movie came out a few years ago called The Big Short, right? Great movie. I'm kind of like the Christian Bale character in that movie, except I have two good eyes. Okay. But that's what we do, is we buy debt, we buy mortgages. And while it's not actually buying the real estate, the mortgage controls the real estate, and the bank always gets paid. So we buy that debt at a discount, Mike. And then what we do is, like I said, we reach out to the borrowers. Hey, what's going on? Let's get you back on track. And our first and foremost strategy is always to try to get the borrower to start paying again. Get them back on track for a modification or trial payment plan for 12 to 24 months. And then if they do pay, great. It's cash flow to us at usually a pretty good yield. Let's give you some simple numbers here. Let's just say they owe 100, their house is worth 100. They owe 125 because they haven't paid in a year. We would buy that debt roughly at 50 grand. All right, 50 cents on the dollar of the true value of the house right there. Well, if their mortgage rate is around a 6% interest rate, and we just bought it at 50 cents on the dollar, if we get them back on track, just paying their existing payment, that's like a 12% annualized cash and cash return to us. Now, if we go to the bar and say, listen, can you pay $100 extra a month or bring $200 extra a month? Our yield will then often climb to the mid-teens or even 20%. Now, if they pay on time for 12 months, the way that the market works is they revalue that debt from non-performing, which we bought at a discount. Now it's a re-performing asset. We could turn around and go back to Wall Street or go to IRA investors or other people out there that are looking for performing debt and sell it at debt now at 80, 90, 95 cents on the dollar to the secondary market. So we in at 50, we got a year worth of cash flow plus some extra. And now we're selling it for at least 30 to 35% above, from 50 to 85 now. That's a pretty good cash and cash return if the borrower will play with us. But that's not always the case. Not every borrower wants to play ball. Some are used to getting a free lunch and not having to pay anything. And those we have to go the legal route. We'll foreclose, and then we foreclose. Then we're going to sell that, since we're the bank in the first lien position. They owe 125. We bought it at 50, but they still owe us that receivable. We can then take it to the legal route, foreclose, and sell at the auction at, if it's only worth 100, we'll sell it like 90, 95,000 at the auction, and then pocket that 40 to 45% above what we paid for it. So It's great. There are a lot of moving parts to kind of the note game. Every state's a little bit different when it comes to the foreclosure time frame. Some are fast, like here in Texas, fastest foreclosure in the country, 21 days. And then you have like states like New York, which we don't buy in, which can take up to 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we do. We buy the debt, try to work it out with one of 10 or 11 different exit strategies for residential borrowers. There's about 12 or 13 strategies for commercial. And just kind of, trying to keep people in their houses or people owning their business if we can, or the commercial property.
So all right, good. There's so much here to unpack. So one of the things that a lot of people are going to wonder, so when you go to that bank and you're kind of pitching to get that debt at a decreased price.
Yep.
And when you say you get that debt at 50 cents on the dollar, and if it's $100,000, let's say you're getting it for 50 grand, are you actually writing the bank a check for $50,000 and then that comes to your name? Or are they just sliding that bank over? You're making payments. What is it that places that debt in your name? Do you have to cash out or what does that look like?
So great question. On residential loans, yes, you're going to have to wire in money to the bank and cash them out. And we use self-directed IRA funds. We use lines of credit. We borrow money from other investors to take that stuff down. Now, if it's a commercial property, usually with a balance, loan balance of $1 million or greater, if you've got a team, people on your team or operations on the commercial side, sometimes the banks will just move it from the non-performing side of the bank to the performing side. If you're going to take over the property or take over operations of the asset, okay. But you've got to show some experience. You've got to have, like I said, team. If you're buying an apartment complex, they want to make sure you've got some apartment complexes or management in place, a self-storage facility, that kind of stuff. They don't want to just swap out one bad bar for somebody who doesn't know how to operate an asset. So, but most of the time, you're paying off the bank at that discounted price. They're just writing it off their books, but you are stepping in an asset. Still, the bar still owes you the full payoff. They still owe you everything they owe you, but that gives you a lot of flexibility to go to the bar and say, hey, Mike, you haven't paid in 2 years. What's going on? What's really, well, I don't have 2 years of payments. Well, we don't need to have 2 years of payments. Can you start paying on time again? Yes. Do you have somebody who can help you? No. Do you have, what can you afford? Let's see if that makes sense. Well, they can't afford. Okay. Well, let's sell it. Do you want to sell the property and walk, or do you just want to sign the property over to us and walk away? We'll forgive you of that debt, but we'll take the asset back, and now it's an REO. We can do whatever we want to do with it.
Okay, so good. So let's unpack this a little bit, because anytime we come into a deal, we do something here. Find deals, find money, right? So the first thing is, how do we start locating notes that would be good debts to acquire?
Great question. I'm so glad you asked. You're not going to walk into your neighborhood bank and say, I want to buy your notes. They're going to call security on you, okay? Because even as a bank, when I was a banker, I was like, no, Chase doesn't sell their notes. Well, Chase and Wells Fargo and Bank of America, they do sell their debt, but the residential stuff is sold in $50 to $100 million portfolios, and you're not going to be able to buy them. They're not even really at a discount for the most part, especially with all the government insured stuff. They're not even selling any of that stuff at a discount because Uncle Sam is going to pay them off. But there are still, mortgage bankers, regional banks that have a tremendous amount of debt on their books. Like I just pulled numbers prior to the call tonight. When we look at the Q4 numbers from last year, as we wrapped up 2021, we had roughly around 82 million loans, mortgages on just the residential side out there. Okay. And our national default rate was somewhere around 4.5%, which equals, when you do the numbers really easy, means there's roughly just under 4 million homeowners in default. Okay. Not just a month behind. We're talking they're 90 days behind. Okay. So there's a lot of institutions out there that have bad debt in their books, that for every month that a borrower is behind, it costs that bank somewhere between 5 and 15 times that in their earning availability, and how much they leverage every dollar that comes to the bank. So lots of lending institutions. I mean, we're getting phone calls from banks and lenders and hedge funds on stuff that they have in the books that they're looking to move. And so while you wouldn't walk into your local bank, you would call the main corporate office for a lot of institutions. There's usually kind of 4 departments inside a major bank that go by different names and how big the bank is. If it's a smaller bank, that's have like 5 branches or greater, you're going to want to look for the chief credit risk officer. Okay. If you're calling a bank that only has one branch, they're not going to sell the debt at a discount because they just can't take for the loss off their books. But
take the hit, right?
yeah, exactly. So a little bit bigger bank, you're going to call and look for the special assets manager. Especially on the residential commercial side, they usually have somebody that handles both different portfolios. You get to these big institutions, that may be the secondary marketing department. All right, there are also big companies out there, big REITs that have whole loan trading departments. So you can literally right now go onto LinkedIn, type in whole loan trading desk, and you'll find institutions out there that have notes on their books that they're looking to sell. And then that's really what we do, is we leverage LinkedIn and reaching out to these asset managers. Hey, what do you have on your books this quarter that you're looking to get rid of? And doing an email drip to the banks and bankers that we pulled this information from, dollar for dollars to get the right department. And then we just drop an email out to them on a monthly basis. Hey, what's on your books this month that you want to get off? Do you have any naughty borrowers? You got anything ugly or anything with any hair on it that you're looking to get rid of? And banks, people often ask, well, why would a bank sell a note when they can just foreclose? It's because the velocity of capital. If they can get 50 cents in the dollar now and not have to go through the legal process of foreclosing, then evicting, and then rehabbing the property, it costs the bank a whole lot more to rehab a property than it does us in a lot of the cases. And so they would rather get that 50 cents in the dollar now, let us take on their nightmares, and we make our bang for the buck by having the flexibility to work with a borrower in like a second chance program. Hey, can you bring 4 months to the table instead of 2 years? Let's get you rocking and rolling and go from there.
So, okay, good. So when you're starting off in the note game, does smaller bank, not necessarily single branch, but the smaller bank usually mean better opportunity?
Yeah. The great thing about when you're buying direct from banks is that they know what's going on with that asset. Like I was just on the phone with a banker 30 minutes ago out of Missouri, and we were talking about a note that he has. And I asked him about it. We reached out to him on LinkedIn. He responded back, and he's like, yeah, I got one note available for sale. And for like 20 minutes, the guy just rattled on how big of a pain in the ass this borrower is. He owns, it's one loan. It's a commercial loan over 23 rental properties.
Oh, wow.
The guys, they've refinanced him 3 times, but he's just a pain in the ass. He's always consistently like 2 weeks late, and they don't want to extend his loan, and they're willing to sell the loan at somewhere around 75 to 80% of balance, which for us equates to roughly about 60% of the fair market value. And so it's in Missouri, which is roughly take about 90 days to foreclose if we need to foreclose on this. So, the cash flow would be pretty good, about a 12% cap rate to us if we take over the asset and just take over the ownership of the assets. That's a way for us to pick up 23 assets at once, But this guy just rattled on how bad he was pissed off because the guy's like CCing them, and the president of the bank and the bar shows up and is sometimes drunk, leaves voice messages. And so, they're literally telling me their motivation. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And then I've also got another, I got a list in from a fund out of California, and I'm looking through the spreadsheet and kind of looking to see this person's trying and looking at their payment history and see that this person's sporadically tried to get back on track. And I said, well, can you send me over, the servicing notes? And so they send me over a file, and I see that this borrower for like 4 years has been trying to modify. She tried to pay through COVID and had to stop, and her husband had a heart attack, and she's lived in this house. I literally see like her hardship letters are scanned in the collateral file. So I could see that this lady really wants to stay, but she just can't get caught back up on the 4 years of payments. I'll buy that note all day, at 30, 40 cents of the dollar, because that's what the bank is willing to sell it to me at. Because I know that if I go to that borrower and say, listen, I see in your letter that you can start making your existing payment at $475 a month. And if she just starts paying that, it's a pretty good yield to me, and based on what I paid for the note. I'm like, why not?
Yeah, sure.
I don't, if you want to start and you stay, there's a lot of, if she doesn't pay, guess what? I'm buying that asset at like 35 cents of value. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
35 grand.
Yeah.
And she's, it's worth 100. She owes more than 100, but there's, she's got some emotional equity that she wants to stay. And I'm willing to work with that kind of person, and so you'd be surprised what you see. I mean, one of the things that I really like about buying notes, and everybody always comes to me, they're looking for foreclosures or REOs. I'm like,
sure.
Look, if you're waiting for REOs and foreclosure at the market, you're going to be waiting a long time, because when we get these lists of notes in from banks, we see them 6 to 12 to 24 months ahead of them before they ever hit the foreclosure auction or the MLS. And the bank sends stuff usually on a regular basis, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, depending on who the lender is. But and we bettered pricing to take over, I guess you could say, a problem child. If we're buying 10 notes, 5 or 6 will modify or reinstate with us. The other 4 will be a mixture of like cash for keys, or we'll, deed in lieu, where we'll give some money to the person to walk away. And then the other 25% will roughly be, we'll have to go the legal route and foreclose. So I got a deal down in Cutler Bay, Florida. Beautiful house, 5-bedroom, 4-bath, 4,400 square feet. It's a big, beautiful house right in the bay. It's worth $1 million. $1 million. The guy owes 1.2. We bought the note a year ago, okay, for 441.
Oh, geez.
Knowing that this guy was a problem borrower. His attorney's been dragging this out. So we thought we'd foreclose in 90 days. It's now 13 months later. Our opening bid at the auction is going to be $900,000 just to see if we get bids on it, which we think we'll have. Well, we're in at basically $500 with the cost of purchasing it and our money costs and a little bit of insurance on it. But it's still going to be that's a 6-figure payday, multiple 6-figure payday for us to hold on to it. So, those are great. The more expensive the asset, usually the borrower drags stuff out. The smaller value of the asset, people just don't have the education or have the resources to drag stuff out. So we do a mixture of both for the most part.
So if you're just now tuning into us right now, I'm here with Scott Carson talking about note investing. Are great to see you from the Bay Area. Adriana, great to see you again from Cupertino. Great to see you all here. Let us know where you're tuning in from so we know who you are, where you're from. But note investing is one of those things that it's misunderstood. And Scott's talking about buying bad debt from the banks, meaning back debt that's not paid at a fraction on the dollar. And Scott, what I love about this, it once again removes the excuse the excuse that the market's too inflated, right? Because so many times, so many investors want to get into real estate in an ideal market, and there's never an ideal market. There's never been one. Even now, it's, we have too much demand, not enough inventory. In 2008, it was reversed. In 17, 18, it was more level, but some people like to see a little bit more turbulence to make money. And so there's always something we want in the market that's not there. And so many people right now are saying, inventory short, there's not a lot of good deals, and you're still finding great deals, just in a different way, and a way that people probably haven't heard of.
Well, and that's the thing is, I live in Austin, Texas. If I would have just bought stuff in Austin, Texas, I would have probably gone bankrupt a long time ago, because it is a very competitive market. And so you have to, that's the one thing, you have to learn to be flexible and pivot with what's available. I love it here in Austin, but I've traveled a ton. I buy in about 30 different states. I love God's waiting room. Florida, I've bought a lot there. I see our folks up in the Bay Area, I don't see a lot of stuff in San Francisco that makes a lot of sense. Even non-performing debt in San Francisco sells for like 90, 95 cents to the dollar. But that's the thing, is you have to go where the deal flow is. For what I could pay for one asset in California, I can buy like a block in Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, what I mean? and then I'm making more in rents, more in cash flow, because and less risk, because my debt's spread over 24, 25 assets versus one asset. And I don't deal with the communist states of California trying to foreclose.
Exactly. It's so true. Because one of the things that, and it's a great balance there. This isn't strategic note investing. This is true of any property. When you get in some of those markets where you can diversify your debt and get into properties for less, usually get more cash flow, not as much appreciation. And so the strategy that you really want in real estate dictates your market, right? So if you want to do long-term buy and hold for 20, 30 years for cash flow only, those Midwestern style markets that you just mentioned, man, they're golden. But if you want to come in like heavy hit high appreciation, that's not going to happen. You're going to go to Austin, or you're going to go to Phoenix, or you're going to go to some of Nashville. Some of these markets are hockey sticking right now.
Well, and that's the thing is too, you got to know your strategy. Note investing is not a get rich quick at all. I will tell you this: our average deal is not 90 days. It's not 6 months. It's more 12 to 24 to 36 months, depending on where we're at. It's not saying that if we buy a portfolio of notes, I'm not going to get 60% of the borrowers back on track of some sort of payment plan in the first 90 days. I
Yeah.
will.
Yep.
It's that
Yep.
25 to 30% that don't want to deal with us that we then have to go the route to foreclose. So
Absolutely.
RR says she's investing in Indiana. I'm looking at, I literally got a list in from a California fund with 50 notes in Indiana today,
Yeah.
all over the state. South Bend, Elkhart, Indiana, Anderson, that I'm looking at somewhere around 55% of the ads is value, to take it down. They're occupied and they'll be good. And the ones there are some that are vacant that will just, cash for keys and then either sell them as REOs or flip them if they need a lot of work. Because I don't want to be doing rehabs across the country. That's the one thing I don't want to do.
No, man. I used to live in Elkhart, so it's so interesting to hear South Bend and Elkhart come on. I've never heard that city mentioned on the channel by one of our guests.
Hang on,
you nailed it, dude.
We need some, cha-ching going on here.
Yeah, seriously. And but the truth is, and what I love about that, while again, Elkhart's not a place you go if you want to buy a 100-unit apartment building and see it tick up. That's not what that city's there for an investing perspective.
Right.
But for notes, fix and flips, cheap buy and holds that you want to hold for 10, 15, 20 years, that's just a really good fundamental market. And that's what I love about places like Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, these Midwestern markets that serve this, and they have short foreclosure times, and they're not going to draw you out for 2 years.
Right. And then you've also got the right that they're actually landlord friendly in a lot of cases.
Exactly.
Too. I mean, in Indianapolis alone, you can evict in 14 days.
Yep.
And so that leads to some great opportunity. I wouldn't necessarily want to be buying in New York City where it could take you 3 years to evict. We don't buy there. You buy, there's, New York, New Jersey, I don't buy there because it takes forever to foreclose.
Yep.
Kentucky, don't buy a lot there on the debt side because they have a big bond. You need $1 million bond if you're going to be buying debt there. If you're a company, or a $500,000 bond if you're an individual. So we just, we find better deals in Cincinnati, across the river, stuff like that. So, each state has its advantages and disadvantages. Texas, while it's fast foreclosure, the banks know that. So they want you to pay a little bit more for a non-performing note here because you can foreclose so fast. Well, we might pay 60, maybe 70 cents on the dollar if it makes sense to foreclose. To buy a note here in Texas, where, like I said, Florida, it could take a year to foreclose in a lot of cases. Well, I'll buy it at 40, 50 cents on the dollar in spots. So,
yeah. So when you get these notes, if you do go to the owner, now that you have the debt, and let's say the seller says, doesn't have any money, they don't want to pay, they don't want to play. So obviously if they don't pay, they don't stay, obviously. With that debt, does the asset immediately come over to you as well? And now you're working it out with them, or how does the asset itself work in the transition?
So let's simplify this. So if you've ever bought a house and got a mortgage on it, you probably got a letter 30 days afterwards that your mortgage was sold to somebody else, right?
Yep, of course.
So when we buy the mortgage, that's what happened. Usually 30 days later, a letter goes out from the seller to the bank. Let's just say that Bank A, to the borrower and say, "Hey, thank you for not paying us. You can now you cannot pay Scott Carson Bank because I'm technically the lender. I'm the bank."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you.
So the deed hasn't changed. The borrower, the title still stays the same, but the assignment of mortgage is what gets filed to the county to show transfer. And then we reach out to the borrower and say, "Listen, what's good? If they haven't moved, if they're still living it, won't play, then, like I said, we either work with them or we'll go the legal route, or we'll offer them cash, to incentivize them to walk away." I'll give you an example. There's a deal literally right now I was talking to a bank in Leavenworth, Kansas. The house is worth about 100. Guy hasn't paid in 5 years. There's 45 grand in back taxes owed. And bank's like, he owes like 130 plus the taxes. We'll sell you the note for 5 grand. I'm like, done.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because our cost basis is 5 grand plus the 50. And then we're going to probably have to do some, a few repairs on it. And we're still determining that. But, we don't, we're taking over that issue to make sense. And it will offer. Bard filed bankruptcy originally a few years ago, and then they stopped paying it, so it was kicked out of bankruptcy. But the beautiful thing is, we may never have to take this property to foreclosure, which we all know foreclosures affect the surrounding properties negatively. Usually, we could keep a bad blight off a neighborhood, which would reduce values a little bit. But the borrower's like, "Listen, work with us. If you take our 5 grand or 2 grand to walk and sign the property over to us, we'll forgive you the debt. Plus, in 2 years." you can go out and get a new loan because we're not going to report a foreclosure in your credit, which will affect you for 7 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And if we find that the borrower on a property owns other real estate in the area in their name, we can listen, you need to work with us. Otherwise, we're going to foreclose, and whatever we don't collect in the foreclosure, we're going to slap a judgment against the other assets.
Yeah.
And that's usually like, oh, okay, let me stop robbing from Peter to pay Paul here and just sign the property over to you and make it. I mean, look, most people are really great. Most people really enjoy the dream of home ownership, and they want to stay. They want to play ball.
Yeah, totally.
But you have those few that don't, and then you've got to be able to. I mean, and what's beautiful about this too, Mike, it's not me going out and collecting. It's not me on the phones to them. This is really, the note business is a vendor-driven business. You have to have licensed servicing companies that are licensed to collect debt in those states. They're the ones that are making phone calls to bars, negotiating with them, and then reporting back to you, and you're dictating. You're more like a general manager, as I like to say. So I know you're a big Cowboys fan, being in the Bay Area, based on the chat roll here. So it's like you're Jerry Jones, okay, with the Cowboys. I mean, we all know Jerry Jones wants to coach the team, but he's not. He's sitting up in his box next to his son. He's just dictating things. And that's how we are as note investors. We're finding the deals or the talent that we want to take down, and then we direct our servicing company and our vendors, our attorneys that we have to foreclose on which route we want to go on, and then we go from there.
So RR says, amen to landlord-friendly states. Yeah, definitely. As a multifamily buyer, that is one of the key marketing or the key market objectives we look at. We won't buy in a non-landlord-friendly state. It's just too hard to be successful. RR also asked a question, Scott, as a new lender, are you working under an LLC? Are you utilizing your PM?
Never buy anything in your personal name. Asset Protection 101. LLCs are usually the best you can use, land trust, but LLCs are what you're going to use most of the time. An S Corp or C Corp if you want to, but an LLC, if you've got any Canadian investors, then you have to do it under Delaware Limited Trust or something like that and be double taxed by Justin Trudeau and the United States for income tax. But LLCs is what we're using. And here's the thing is we're buying assets. You can usually start off with just one LLC, but as you acquire deals or you are doing other real estate, like Mike, you've got an apartment complex in one LLC. You wouldn't want to use that same LLC to buy a portfolio debt. You want to keep it separate.
Yep.
In case something happens, in case the borrower sues you. I've been sued by borrowers when we had the right to foreclose. If something happens on the property, you just want it limited to that one LLC and stuff like that.
Absolutely. 100%. Yep. LLC, limited liability. As you become a business owner, you have to start thinking about liability. It's kind of the sad world we live in, but it is the 100% true world we live in. You cannot be doing this stuff in your personal name because it can run over things that really matter to you. Somebody takes one of my apartment buildings, other than my investor capital, which I'll go work like hell to get back. But that's the only thing I care about losing. Other than that, I don't care. I lose my personal home and things like that. Now I start caring.
Yeah. Well, you got to keep that asset protection. I mean, keep the two separate.
Yeah.
You got to realize we're all running a business. If you're in real estate, you have to treat it like a business, not like a hobby.
Yeah, exactly. And then RR also said, own nothing but control everything. You got it.
I think that's Rockefeller whispered that on his deathbed. Own nothing but control everything.
That is 100% right. 100% right. So Scott, one question that as you get that loan, let's say it's a bigger deal. Let's say it's that $400,000, $500,000 deal. We talk a lot on our channel about raising private capital. So I love talking to people that also leverage private capital just from a different asset. You're asking to invest in a different thing. So what is the value proposition to an investor in your world? I know what it is in the multifamily world. What is the value proposition to your investors in your world? What yields are you giving them? Is it more lending? Is it equity? How do you structure your deals?
So it varies. We're working on our fund, so it's usually going to be a flat rate of return. Usually, I would not. Here's the thing: the market, the economy out there is helping you raise cheap capital these days, easier than it's ever been before. We leverage a lot of self-directed IRA investors. If somebody's got a chunk of change, we'll maybe start an LLC with them, and then depending on how seasoned they may go. Then we might do an equity deal where we're going splitsies with them on a portfolio or an individual asset. But most of the time, we're raising money through our fund and giving them, a 6 to 8% return with a 25% of the splits on the back end.
Okay.
That's what our fund is doing. When you start off, you're not going to want to drop 25 to 50 grand to put a fund together. So you would want to start off just, borrowing money from friends, families, and then it's different because you're not putting a lien on the property. You can't put a lien on a lien. You know what I mean? Oh. But you can have them co-named on the transfer docs, the assignment of mortgage that secures their investment. If you have another property with equity, you could put a lien on that property that secures that for them, or you could go splitsies in an LLC in a lot of cases. 51% ownership to you, 49% ownership to them, and then that LLC buys that individual asset. But most people think you've got to have 5 million, 10 million bucks to buy notes. That's not the case at all. I got approval, like I said, for a deal for $5,000 just today.
Exactly.
You don't want to use your last $5,000, but there's the beautiful thing, as I like to tell people, is like many times most of our investors get started somewhere around 25 to 50 grand, where they're buying one asset or maybe two assets and spreading the risk across the board and then going from there. But there's so much in private capital out there. I'm sure you like this. We love to go to the county records, like the appraisal districts, and do a search for people that have bought a property where they're self-directed IRA, and like doing a search for Equity Trust or Quest Trust or Pensco, because those people that have used their IRA to buy a property, they can't be touching the asset. It's got to be passive. You know what I mean? And so that they love being in notes. I mean, most of your self-directed IRA companies, at least 30 to 50% of their portfolios in debt of some sort.
Of course it is. Yeah.
They've bought debt or they've lent money out. So we go to the county appraisal district, and then we also go to the county clerk district or the county recorder and do the same search for the same names. And those are people that have lent money out of their IRA. And we just, the only direct mail we do is we drop them a letter or postcard once a month to those lists. Say, hey, did you buy this property for investment? Are you looking for more deals to fund or to buy for your portfolio? Let's schedule a chat, to talk about what you're looking to do. And the conversation that we've been getting from a lot of people, like, yeah, I've got money burned a hole. It's losing 6% or 8% or 12% with inflation. Give me something. Give me a hard asset, or let me lend you money at 6 to 7%. So at least my money's producing something versus losing buying power.
So I don't know, those of you that are listening, the value of the last probably 120 seconds of this conversation is millions and millions of dollars, literally, not only to you, but of investor capital, to locate lists that have been. Now, if you have never heard of the IRA concept, please look on our channel. We have a lot of IRA videos talking about.
You got a lot of great stuff on your channel. I was surfing out one of your new subscribers to the channel. It was so good.
Oh, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. But one of the big things with IRA, it is the best kind of investor because they can't touch it. So if you have, especially for multifamily guys, we don't turn over properties for 3 to 7 years sometimes. Those are our bread and butter people because they can't touch them anyway. And if any of you do have an IRA and have capital in an IRA, please don't let it sit there. It's a bad idea. Get it in something, get it in notes, get it in multifamily, get it in something where it's doing 8% to 12% at the end of the day, rather than a 3 to 6% or 7% sitting in your IRA. So make sure.
Well, I have to share something with you from us doing our own investigating and talking with the IRA companies, that most of the IRA custodians out there, 30% on average is sitting making zero.
Oh,
think of the millions of dollars. It does break your heart, but the opportunity, we always know.
Oh, totally.
We know that he who has the gold makes the rules, right?
Yeah.
Well, he who has the gold in this case, it's not the actual money in the IRA account. The gold is actually the deal that can return a decent return. And if you look at what checking savings accounts are giving you 0.01%. If you're offering somebody 6%, you're not giving them 5.9% better. You're giving them 5,900% times better than what the banks are offering.
It's 100% true. It's 100% true. And this is one of the things that we talk about a lot, about why you should not be afraid to raise capital. You are inviting them to a party compared to what they are experiencing. You don't need to be, you're not out there begging for money. If you are, you're doing it wrong.
And that's the thing. It's most people, and that's why we always talk with, IRA investors, you have something immediately in common with them. You're both investors. They're looking for deals. They've got money, and that they pulled the trigger based on the county record. So it comes down, do you have a deal versus theory? They really don't, especially on the note business side. It's a little bit different than the real estate side, because do you have any experience? Well, no, but my servicing company is servicing 4,000 loans right now. My attorney's done 6,000 foreclosures. We've got people to get back on track there. I'm not the guy going out and trying to fix the house up or put a roof on or to collect rent. It's a third party that's doing it. So it's often leads to a lot of credibility issues that are gone because they've got these amazing vendors that are doing stuff. Yeah.
So when you when you get done with an investor comes to you, they say, hey, I want to invest in your deal. Of course, there's different ways to structure that deal for sure. Average, you're in this, you said 6 to 8 range, I think you said, plus 25% on that back end.
Yeah.
Is that equaling in the 10 to 12 IRR overall return on the deal? Is that probably
right? We're looking roughly in the mid-teens.
Mid-teens. Okay, good.
Mid-teens.
That's about the same as multifamilies. We aim at 14 to 19 is kind of our target.
And you never, like I said, the great thing is you never know, which it's kind of a choose your own adventure in a lot of the deals. Some that if you think you'll get reperforming, that you got to foreclose. Others you think you'll foreclose on, that the borrower suddenly shows up with a chunk of cash. And then, okay, I'm holding on to this for 12 months of payments, and then I'll just get my chunk of cash in 12 to 18 months when we sell it to the secondary market, sell it back to Wall Street, or sell it to another IRA investor who wants to cash this out and keep the deal for their own portfolio or something like that.
Absolutely. Okay. Great. All right, Scott, this has been valuable. Actually, also just put gold nuggets being spilled. Thank you. Totally. Some great content today from Scott. And Scott, how do they get in touch with you? You're putting a great training together. Tell them a little bit about that training, and I'm going to drop the link in the comments right now for you guys to go, and you're going to love the price. So go for it, Scott.
So I've been teaching note investors how to do this since 2010 and taught thousands of investors. And I buy notes. I bought over $1 billion in debt. So constantly buying on a regular basis. And so we started when COVID kicked in 2 years ago. We started, instead of teaching a 3-day class, I said a lot of people just want to get their feet wet to learn more about it. So we teach a 1-day class every third Saturday of the month called Note Weekend. And it's yours truly. It's me teaching it from basically 9 a.m. to 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, going how do we fund these deals, and then also how do we flip these deals to make money. And it's 7-8 hours. Like I just taught one this last Saturday. We actually had 75 assets that just came in that we literally spent time working through. So it's usually $99. You got a bunch of bonuses that go along with it, including the replays of the previous class if you don't want to wait till the next class so you can watch now. But like I said, it's usually $99, and we're doing a very special thing. Drum roll, please. I don't know if you can hear my noisemaker here, but we're just giving it away for free for you. Anybody that's watching on here tonight, if you use the code FRITZ if you go to noteweekend.com, put in your information, it'll take you to the checkout page. Just type in the coupon code FRITZ, FRITZ, all caps. It'll drop it down to a big whopping price of $0 for you, and then you'll get the links to the replays and then a live ticket to the class, and we teach it on May 21st is the next time we're teaching it live.
Scott, thank you so much, man. This was so much value and so much. I know you've got a giving heart, and you certainly proved that today again, brother. Thank you so much for your time, which is, of course, the most valuable asset, and also just the content.
Adriana asked the question, 9 a.m. what time zone? I'm in Austin, Texas. So it's Central Standard Time. For those folks on California, it's a little early for you, but you get off a little early in the afternoon too for you. And noteweekend.com, code FRITZ. Like I said, 9 a.m. to 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. It depends who and how many questions I get asked throughout that one day.
Okay. Awesome. So I will, I'll also post that link in the description of the video. I'll edit that description, make sure that gets there. It's also right there, noteweekend.com. Throw in all caps FRITZ, FRITZ. And that'll be a free ticket for you to go and hang with Scott for the day, for that workshop, which is invaluable. Please do not miss that. That would be crazy for you to miss that. So do that. And Scott, thank you again, brother. And I appreciate you coming on and providing value today.
Hey, glad to be here. Make sure you guys that are watching this, you smash that subscribe button and that little bell to follow, because we love seeing followers on our YouTube channels as educators and making sure that they're. But hey, you want to keep abreast of the good stuff that Mike's bringing on his channel here. So make sure you hit that subscribe button now.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thanks so much. All right, guys, hit subscribe, hit like. Can't wait to see you guys in the next show. Be looking for our next guest. I'm excited. You'll have an announcement in the next few days or so who our next week's guest is going to be. So just be on the lookout. Love y'all. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.